and we'll record the faculty meeting. So Elise, can you pop up the slides and the agenda? We have got a packed agenda, so we'll hopefully be able to get through all of these presentations. Elise, do you have the slide deck? Is that working? Yes, great. Here it comes. And can you put it into presentation form? Yeah, awesome. Oh, you got to change the view. Look at the display settings up at the top so it's not in the presenter view. You see the top bar there where it says display settings. Yeah. Yeah, swap that. Yeah, right there. There we go. Perfect. All right. Can you advance the slides? All right, so we're going to have a couple of presentations. We have a few guests. Barrett, I don't know if Vinny's coming as well. Are we waiting for her?
She's asked to be promoted. She tried to log in with the regular, and I just texted her saying she needs to join with the panelist link, which you guys, at least I think you just resent a couple minutes ago.
Yeah, okay, so hopefully we'll get are you going to be able to do the presentation, or should we wait for Vinny?
I can actually start and she can do the back end if you would rather. My slides, I think, are in.
Okay, yeah, great. Yeah, they're all definitely here. We're going to have I think this is part of the curriculum redesign, getting the culture.
Yeah, so Vinny's going to talk a little bit about the curricular redesign, and then I'm going to talk about a piece we need to engage in for that curricular redesign.
Okay, why don't we go ahead and get started with it. So we have Dr. Barrett Fromey from the medical school to come and talk to us about opportunities for advancing our culture. So welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. And like we said, Vinny is going to join us now in just a minute, and she'll talk about a little bit more about the curriculum renewal. But one of the things we are finding both with the old curriculum and the new curriculum is that feedback is essential, something we have to really work on as faculty, as actually, honestly, recipients for those, for our resident colleagues and our student colleagues, but we're going to focus on us and using feedback to have a culture of growth. Next slide. Okay, so we're not animated, but that's okay. So when you hear feedback, right, I'm guessing your reaction is somewhere on that little bottom emoji screen, right? If someone says to you, oh, let me give you some feedback, honestly, I immediately go to the same reaction as when I was in high school and someone said the principal wants to talk to you. It's not a good feeling. It feels like something wrong is gonna happen, something bad is happening. But the reality is that's not what feedback is about. The reality is, and the other reality is that it is just as emotional sometimes for us to be asked to give feedback. If I have to give feedback to someone that is not, hey, you're awesome, then it feels also kind of towards the left of this, the negative, the right of this emoji board. But what feedback is really for, and this is really essential for how we think about why we will do it when we don't want to, why we really need to spend time working on it, is because, and we'll go next slide, is because feedback, I'm missing slides here. Feedback is about growth. Feedback, all feedback is a way to get people to where they want to be. And I love these two phrases about feedback. Feedback is essential to identify and narrow the gaps between actual and desired performance. So it's where am I? Where do I want to go? Right. And I love that performance is in here, especially when I'm talking to my colleagues in procedural specialties, because you guys are so classically performance-based, right? There is a motor skill, there is a performance like you're playing a piano versus medicine. There's a performance, medical specialties, but yours is a little bit more concrete in some ways. And what we have to think of is not feedback as a judgment. Feedback is saying you're good or you're bad. Feedback as saying, and I know the coaching literature comes out of surgery, right? Atul Gawande first wrote about it. It is, I'm just going to help you get from where you are to where you want to be. And that is key. And that is a way you can phrase it with your learners, that it's not, and I think it can be intimidating, especially for more senior and respected and revered physicians to say something to someone. But if we can change that climate to a climate of growth, to a climate of let me help you get there, then feedback is going to be more effective. So next slide. Oh, okay. That's feedback about growth. Next one. So culture is a good part of this. I won't belabor my favorite article ever, but it looked at feedback in music and sports versus feedback in medicine. And if anyone knows, I'm a sports fan, my husband's a Hoosier. And so I have to put Bobby Knight up here because it took me years to convince my husband that Bobby Knight wasn't a god and he may actually be an evil person. But we want to create a culture of feedback that is positive, that is supportive. And if you know who's on the left, that's Bobby Knight. And Bobby Knight was Indiana basketball coach, won championship, but he was kind of an angry man. He yelled at people. He wasn't supportive. It was really about telling you what you did wrong rather than let me help you get where you need to be. On the right, you see John Wooden, who everyone, quotes when they talk about coaching. Everyone quotes when they talk about a good teacher. He there is working with Lou Alcindor, who we would know as Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And he was somebody who mentored, nurtured, helped people find their strengths and weaknesses and helped them get where they were going. He was part of that process. We want to be that culture. We want to think of our feedback as John Wooden, helping people identify, self-identify, and then find a path towards greatness, find that path to be the next great surgeon or the next great pediatrician. And so that's where we should focus on culture. So what do we know about what makes a good feedback culture? We'll go with the next slide. So ideal culture comes from a couple things. And when you look at music and sports compared to medicine, these are some of the things they do better, that there is a relationship. That is really hard for us because they may be a student or a resident may only be in an OR with you for a brief period, or may only have clinic once with you that month. We hear all the time, it's very short relationships. It's not even really a built relationship. I don't know how you guys were, but back in the old days for me, I was on first service for a month with the same learners. But you can establish a relationship a short period of time that I'm invested in you, in what you want to achieve, even in this day, in this one operation, in this week, whatever it is. That feedback is expected, that they know they're going to get feedback from you, and they know kind of the cadence of that feedback. I'm going to give you feedback intraoperatively, and I'm going to give you a short little talk at the end. We're going to talk for a second after the operation, and that's the feedback you're going to get. Or I'm going to spend this month with you, and I'm going to make sure I give you feedback at the end of every week. But it is expected. I say I'm going to give it to you. That's an important piece. I start every week of service saying, I'm going to give you feedback every day, and then we're going to talk at the end of the week. Now, I'm not saying you have to do that cadence, but that it's expected. And then that feedback is an expectation. One of my favorite quotes from this article is that, coaches and music teachers are expected, we hire them, that's what they're there for. But doctors, they have to do research and clinical care and all these other things. And so if they do feedback, it's unexpected and, it's something we didn't expect. But we need to have an expectation that we are going to give feedback. I think sometimes we don't. It's not on our list of things we're going to do. I've got to go to the OR. I've got to get that grant in. I've got to, I'm in a clinical leadership role. I've got to get to those meetings. But feedback should be as much as an expectation of us as it is expected by our learners. And then it's focused on performance, not on personality, not on something that can't be changed. Anyone who knows me I have a big personality. It's the highest compliment I've ever had, that people say they feel like I have a surgeon personality. And I think that's such a great compliment. But I'm big. And so when that happens, you can't give me feedback on that. My mother's tried, she's failed. But you can say you are talking over people or whatever the piece is. So focus on the performance is what we need to do. And that is the culture of feedback we want. Next slide. So what is our role as the attending? First is to facilitate goal setting. Now, this can take 1 second, 1 hour, whatever you want it to be. But if you're going into an operation, have you ever done this one before? Okay, you have. Where have you struggled? Where do you want the most support? Where do you want to work on developing your skills today? What are your goals? What are your goals for being on this service that you've never been on before? What do you want to get out of it? So facilitate some goal setting, and we could spend a whole hour on that, but I just want to touch on it. Make sure you observe, listen, you guys are solid at this, right? When I talk to some people, out in ambulatory clinic, they may not be in the room as much. When I'm a hospitalist, I see them on rounds, but I don't necessarily go down to the admissions with them. So finding an opportunity to observe, I think you guys don't even have to think about that. You want to deliver it effectively, which we'll talk about a second. And then you can always role model not only how to give good feedback, but asking for feedback. So we do a whole talk on how to ask for feedback on yourself. We're actually doing a study with a student going into surgery about feedback up. How should people give feedback to people above them? So trying to make that a dialogue and bi-directional. Next slide. So these are the rules of the road. This has been since 1983. Jack Endy wrote this, but you've probably heard this before, but I always want to remind myself, you want to make feedback that is specific. Read more is not a good one. We've all done it. We've all said it. I don't know what that means. What do you want me to read more of? Graphic comics, or what is it? So specific, something, I want you to be able to present a patient in less than 5 minutes. You guys are like, that's super long. Let's make it 1. But it's going to be very specific to something they have done or you want them to do. Don't have them have to guess. It should be behavioral, right? I gave you that example. It's not, I used to get my feedback, I kid you not, my positive feedback and my negative feedback on from everyone I ever ran into was you're hyper. That's great, but it's not a behavior. It's probably undertreated ADHD. But behavioral is during rounds, you walk around talking to everyone and you're not listening. So you don't know what we're doing with the patients at the end of the day. Behavioral is, you held this that way, you should hold it this way. Behavioral is, when I saw you, when that nurse came to ask you a question, you immediately answer without hearing her whole question. So I don't think you were able to answer it. Specific examples focused on behavior, not on personality. My favorite on that is I had a colleague once who said she wanted to give the feedback that her intern needed to stop being such a New Yorker. And I thought that was like the greatest example of that is a personality or genetics, but not the behavior. And so she had to suss out what the behavior of being a New Yorker was. And I was born in New York, so there's nothing wrong with that. It should be well-timed and expected. We talked about feedback should be an expectation and it should be expected. When are you going to give it? Are you going to give it every day? I tell my learners they're going to get it at least once every day after they present. So they're not shocked by that. It should be regulated in quantity. I don't think that's a problem. You guys are always on the go. I don't think you're ever going to spend too much time on this, overly do it, but never give too much for someone to work on. Non-judgmental. So it's not you were late. It's not that you're lazy. It's, I noticed you come late to rounds, right? That's non-judgmental. It's just a fact. Always invite their perspective. Does this seem consistent with what you feel your performance is, or how do you feel you've been doing? Tell me what a strength and a weakness. And then base it on your own observation when possible. We are put in situations sometimes where we can't do that because the nurses come up to us or someone comes up to us and says they've been behaving a certain way, but try at best to do firsthand information. Next slide. So you guys may know the old feedback sandwich, which is say something good, say something bad, say something good. That is the crap sandwich. We don't want to do that anymore. The new sandwich, if you have time, is ask the learner their self-assessment. I always say, tell me one thing you think you're doing well, one thing you want to improve upon. Or you can say, tell me one thing you thought was successful in that procedure. Tell me one thing you would change. Then you tell what you saw. Oh, that's great. I actually agree with the first one, but I don't agree with the second, or something to that effect. But here's what I want to add. And then ask the response, right? The learner perspective. How did that seem? Was that consistent with what you thought? And now let's put a plan for improvement. You can't just say you were bad at that. Good luck. It has to be, you could get better at this. Here's an approach I think you could take. Next slide. This is actually, I think, from anesthesia. I kind of like it. It's also frame-based feedback. So the sandwich is more describe how the trainee is doing, diagnose their immediate learning needs. Where do you have a need? And let's direct your instruction. It's coaching, right? Here's what I saw. Here's what I think your biggest need is. Here's what I want you to do next time. This doesn't take in the learner perspective, but it does get at kind of like the basics, especially if you're in a brief situation with them. Just here's what I saw. Here's the one major thing I think you need to fix. And let me tell you how to do that. Next slide. So this is just from a great article in 2012. If you've never read the 12 tips series, there's a great series. You can literally Google 12 tips for anything medical education and it will come up. So this is into the 12 tips for effective feedback. And we talked about a lot of this. Respectful learning environment. That's partly the relationship, but partly also making them feel like you're John Wooden, you're a coach, you're there to help. What are the goals and objectives for feedback? You're going to observe, timely and regular, right? They shouldn't go the whole time with you and not get anything, but they also shouldn't feel like it's coming out of nowhere. Learner self-assessment, reinforce and correct, neutral language that's specific, confirm their understanding, action plan, and then you can reflect on your own feedback skills. I spent way too much time thinking about my feedback skills. Staff development opportunities right here, and then make it part of your culture. And that comes from the top down. So Jeff's hearing me right now. That's the top down saying, this is something we value. This is as important as anything else you have to get to today. You need to make sure you do this, right? So having that culture that this is a valued piece, it would be great if I got protected time just to get feedback all the time. It's not going to, but we do get protected time for teaching. So next slide. Now I want to switch real quickly because we often talk about feedback and evaluation, and they are not the same thing per se. So feedback, formative feedback is the way we phrase it versus summative evaluation. So when I'm talking about feedback right now, I'm talking about that verbal that we talk about when we're on rotation or service with someone. Evaluation, when we fill out the paper, that's summative. And that says they've been on with me for a day, a week, a month, whatever it is. And this is where we ended. So formative feedback is timely. It's while you're working. Evaluation says, here's what happened the last week or the last month or whatever it is. Feedback tends to be more descriptive, informal, shows where they can improve, and let's go do it now, and it's non-judgmental. Evaluation feels a little bit more high stakes, feels a little bit more like your end assessment, even though your end assessment may tie into their entire surgery grade. It still feels final for you. It's variably more high stakes because it's written down, but it is ensuring that standards are attained. Like, here's where we ended up. Evaluations are super important. I wish I could say they weren't. I love formative feedback only. For me, that's the growth opportunity. But evaluations are necessary for the clerkship director, who has to write the narratives that go into the MSPE. And I happen to be the MSPE director, so I want good narratives for our stuff. Next slide. And so we want to make sure we give the clerkship directors good substrate, right? If everybody who does an evaluation says did fine, your clerkship directors can't write anything good. They can't write a paragraph that says you're fine 10 times. So giving some specifics in that is really good. So first, finish them on time. I recommend finishing them as soon as you get that request, because that is most proximal to when you saw them and when you can remember what you did. I can't remember past 2 days. Include their strengths and their weaknesses. Make sure your comments are detailed. You can include the trainee response to feedback and recommendations for next steps. I actually use a 1, 2, 3 rule, which is one sentence on what they were good at when they started, and one sentence on what they weren't good at but improved, and then 3 sentences if you need it on something that they weren't good, you gave them feedback and they didn't get better, right? Maybe they don't have all those sentences, but specifics. He was particularly good with communication with nurses, or she found herself, she was an extraordinarily skilled individual in the OR with, advanced technique. Those are the things you kind of want to say for these. And there's nothing that should be a surprise. No one should get to their evaluation and say, oh my God, Dr. Fromi says all this. She told me I was doing fine. You should never have that, discordance with what you're doing. So again, really important to fill these out because it goes eventually into their MSPE, which goes to their residency program if it's students, and for residents, it's a good way so that they can document their competencies. So the competency committees have something to work off of. Next slide. All right, so take home points, and Vinny, I'm going to give you 6 minutes. It's going to be great. Culture matters. It's important as a group to create culture, or just culture within your like for me, we have a culture in our hospital medicine section. I have a culture that I try to put out there. It's essential for growth. None of us get better without feedback. If we could, we'd be completely autonomous people, but that's not why we go to training. It takes practice. I'm still not good at this, and I teach on it all the time. And then evaluations, just we need to make them better. We need to create something that people can build off of so that people have it. The students, just so you know, read these like the Bible. I mean, they will pull them up and show me exactly, but they said exactly this. And I'm like, wow, that's a lot. So just knowing they are looking at your evaluations. Those are my take home points. And I think I had a last slide. We don't need to do questions, but I'm available if you want to email me, if you want to walk through any scenarios you have. I often talk to colleagues if I'm struggling with feedback on someone in particular, and talking to someone outside of your department sometimes can be really good, but happy to answer questions by email. But
yeah, this is great. This is really great. Before I turn it over to Dr. Aurora, thanks, Dr. Fromi. That was really good. You can imagine that surgeons find this hard because we're very concerned about the historical stereotyping of surgeons, and that any negative comments will be viewed as hostile or intimidating or abuse. And that sort of thing. So could you maybe comment on the fine line between giving feedback that doesn't get misinterpreted as abuse or being embarrassed or being humiliated? So I will always say I can't control your reaction, right? And I have given feedback what I think is like every rule I just gave you, and they cry. I've made a lot of people cry in my time, and they cry or they get mad or they say Dr. Fromi sucks.
I can't control that. My job is to try and do my best version and know I'm rooted in the right kind of principles. I have found that I start every rotation now saying, consider me your coach. I'm just here to help you be better. And when I give you feedback, either in the moment or at the end of the week, all I'm trying to do is get you to the person you want to be. And since doing that, people are far less likely to think I'm being mean, which is really interesting. We've actually done a study on it. And we've shown that if you use certain behaviors, and that's one of them, the coaching behavior, it increases how they view you as a teacher, and it makes them more open to the experience. So I think that's one way, just to start by saying, listen, like, disclaim it. I'm going to be direct. People say all the time, Fromi's direct. She gives the straight scoop, right? But I disclaim it early. I'm like, here's my disclosure. I'm gonna be straight with you. Like, it's not being mean. I'm gonna focus on your behaviors, and we're gonna focus on making you the person you want to be.
Somehow I think people buy that from you better than they might buy it from a stereotypical surgeon.
I don't know. I used to get evaluations that said I was scary. Multiple that said I was scary.
I think that's common. We get that a lot. All right, thanks. That's great. Dr. Aurora, did you want to?
Thank you. Yes, thank you so much for having me. I won't use any slides. I'll just keep this one slide up. And I'm here to give you the why. And thank you for the question about mistreatment. I'll start with the good news. The mistreatment numbers are down. And so we're eager to say that thank you for your partnership. We know we've done a lot of work to improve mistreatment. We need to keep doing that work. We have a real-time bias and mistreatment reporting system. But what we really need your help with is exactly what Dr. Fromi Barrett we go by is really referencing, which is feedback. And here's the why. 1 in 5 students say they are dissatisfied with the formative feedback that they receive on all rotations. This was reported to the LCME, our accreditor, and deemed unsatisfactory in our final report, which we will be reporting on back to them in December. So we're fully accredited, we got a clean bill, but the new thing is we're pen pals. And I know that Kevin Rogan out there who does GME work knows what I mean by when I say pen pals. And so the good news is the mid-rotation feedback, the AAMC graduating questionnaire, students ask about mid-rotation feedback. That number has improved over the last 5 years in surgery. And so thank you for your partnership, but we're still below the national average. So I know we can do better because all schools have lifted. And so we need to lift too. And so a lot of that work is being led, as you know, by your clerkship directors, Drs. Jaskowiak, Shogun, Hampton. But since we know we can improve, we wanted to give you some actionable work. And then of course we have resources in your department. And so I see Dr. Dorsey's here. She's been a huge force in helping us really think about the coaching aspects and feedback, especially for our preclinical students. But I do know that she's here as a huge asset to you as well. And so as we change the curriculum, the good news is that most of that focus is going to be on the pre-clerkship side. But in the clerkships, when you guys are on the clerkships, we also know we want to lift the floor and do a great job. And everyone should be a coach. There are some schools that have dedicated coaching programs. And as you know, we have career advising programs, but we know we are all coaches. And this resonates with surgeons, I believe, as you guys coach your residents, you coach each other. And so the last thing I wanted to leave you with is, as we lift the floor, we need all faculty here to get better at teaching. And so we're actually inviting national experts to come spend time with us, as well as our leveraging our internal experts, including Dr. Fromi here. And so we are offering a FAME Evolve series. And so the routine faculty advancing in medical education series is evolving, and we're really doubling down on how to be a better teacher, incorporating small group learning with Dr. Gooding, who is the co-director for the Harvard Macy Institute. Dr. Fromi and Dr. An, our very own, will be talking about interactive lecturing and some newer ways to do that. And then we've got Dr. Maya Mahmood, an OBGYN doctor, who is at the University of Michigan, senior advisor to the AMA Accelerating Change in Medical Education, author of a new book on clinical coaching, coming to spend some time with us on coaching. And a shout out to Dr. Balich, who asked for 7 a.m. times. And so we are working to get you guys some surgery friendly times, and at least 2 or 3 of these times, as well as they will all be recorded. So with that, I'm going to pause and see if there's any questions.
Kevin Rogan asked a question in the chat that I don't think is visible to everybody. It says that he thinks that one of the barriers to effective and honest feedback is the fact that medical student and resident evaluations of faculty affect faculty promotion. And there's a lot of concerns about the weaponization of student evaluations of faculty in the promotion process, and wonders whether rethinking that dynamic could help. Do you want to comment on that? I know that's a loaded question.
Yeah, no, thanks, Kevin. And I certainly, I sit on COPE. I know Barrett, I think you still sit on COPE, right? So we're both here, not in our capacity there, but we can certainly take this back to Shola and talk with our faculty affairs team about as we move to honest feedback. And I did also want to say there is this approach called radical candor, which is I care about you. And because I care about you, I want to tell it to you straight. And then, okay, how can I help you get to where you're going to be? And so again, it is sort of the sandwich technique, but really couching those actionable feedback in a way that people feel they got something. What we hear from students often is, I got a grade and no one ever told me why I didn't get an honors. That is way, way more common in terms of what we're hearing from an ombudsman or from a clerkship director, is, then I got great, I was told to improve and I didn't know what that meant. That we don't usually hear that. And so if we can pivot to get that feedback earlier, I still think it'll help a lot when in processing those summative evaluations, as Barrett mentioned.
And just really quickly, the thing I didn't mention, and that's important, I think, especially with student learners, is don't feel like you have to go overboard with what you're feedbacking on. If you've only been with them for a day, pick something small. I think sometimes when we start our evaluation, try to write more than we saw or try to saw more than we did. Just focus on like really quick things. Like my colleague just said yesterday, and I loved it, one of my senior colleagues, you can give feedback to an Uber driver after a 20-minute ride. So you can give feedback to a learner after a 20-minute encounter. And
just that tends to be, 5 stars with a, tip,
mine is 3 stars and I run. But it is that sense that you just find short directed things you can give. And it may be a little bit as specific and behavioral, and you've talked to them about it. It might work better.
And I also wanted to comment, you can say, I really like how you did the following, right? So don't forget the positive stuff. And that can really help offset this, the concern that you raised about surgeons. Great.
Thanks so much for being here. We're going to got a number of other items on our faculty agenda today. So thanks so much. Let's move on. I think Dr. Sherry Snow, who's our associate ambulatory director working together with Ken Nunes, is here, and I see a number of other members of the team, Curtis and Julianne and Kaylee. So I'll let you coordinate how you're going to present that, Sherry. I'll turn it over to you. I don't know who's running the slides.
Thanks, Jeff. So I'm here to talk to you today with the team, Curtis Asbell, Julianne Joseph, and Kaylee Hildreth, to talk about the Master Provider Repository. And this may seem like a technically dry topic. However, I really want to stress that this is a foundation to promote clinical interests and to guide accurate patient acquisition. The Master Provider Repository is going to be really the foundation to create user profiles on the web, online scheduling, and will be really imperative for the referral project that we're undertaking. So our hope is that every provider will assess, develop, edit their own profiles, especially with regard to their clinical interests, to help us to have the best information to guide all these other projects. And with that, I'll turn it over to the team and have them tell you a little bit more about it.
Next slide, please. Thank you, Dr. Snow. And really quickly, just going to give a quick overview of the Master Provider Directory and how it really firms up a couple of those highlights that Dr. Snow hit. So really, we've spent the last several years multi-organizational, across campuses, across departments, large integrated teams putting together this provider directory, which today sits as really an automated central repository, single source of truth, pulling in data from various systems across the organization, so that we have a place where we can go to as we think about some of the other projects and programs that you see on the slide. So as we think about that being in place today, we have moved forward with some of the online scheduling work, which is really a very large scale platform across the system for all providers. And one of the requirements for the inputs for that is centralized and accurate provider information. And that then enables over the longer term opportunities for referrals, both for in-house, if you will, providers, as well as community-based providers, to be able to have accurate information about where our providers practice, what their subspecialties or subspecialties are, so that we can help patients get connected to the right providers in the right locations, as well as making that easy to access for our community of providers. And then, maybe piggybacking on the previous presentation just a bit, getting to a place where there is online reputation management and the challenges that we face as we continue to grow into an organization that receives feedback from our community, and that helps us become better as we strive to serve those who are in need of our services. Next slide, please. So really the progress that we've made as we moved through fiscal 22 and into fiscal 23, all of the providers in the organization went live last year. We had physicians that went live in May of 2022, and I know including many of you in this meeting today have been a part of reviewing your online profiles in the portal and making those updates, and that's been navigating the process to make sure that your individual data is correct. And then as we did that, we did learn that there were some opportunities to improve the user experience for our advanced practice provider community. So we did that, took some extra time to do that work, and they all went live in October of 2022. So where we find ourselves today is that we are still in an ongoing process of reviewing and updating those profiles and making sure that they're correct as we kind of assertively move forward in that next level of the online appointment scheduling. And then, and before we move on to the next slide, just maybe want to hit the importance of making sure that the details for yourself, if you haven't reviewed your profile in the portal yet, is accurate and complete, and that over time we will continue working through other projects. Not sure how much it impacts this particular group, moving toward individual schedules and profiles and away from the Epic resource profiles, and this will also contribute to that. This time I'll go ahead and turn it over to Kaylee.
Good morning. I'm recovering from a cold, so if I drop a word or you're unable to understand me, please throw it in the chat and I'll make sure we get it answered. So through the portal, providers and departmental staff can modify all of your own specialties and your areas of clinical expertise, which are then displayed ultimately on the UChicago Medicine website. The reason that we've really developed this as a self-service portal is because it's imperative that as patients are searching the website for providers, to help them find the best match. Through our data, we see that they typically start their search by searching for a specialty, and then we've enabled the capability, and we do see that folks use it pretty often, to expand upon that provider specialty and really dig into areas of clinical expertise. Those areas of clinical expertise help the patient find the best match provider within their specialty, which helps with provider-patient match ultimately, and a better match for filling provider templates. The areas of clinical expertise that you'll find on the website and in NPR cover everything from areas of expertise within diagnoses and procedures, and just in general areas of specialization within your area of practice. In addition to highlighting the expertise of our providers, listing areas of expertise really does help make sure that within the scheduling that we've been continuing to roll out, providers are being put into the right, patients are being put into the right slot through online scheduling, and so that we ensure that the patient gets their needs met within the clinic of care that they're seeking. I think we go to the next slide here. I might have been last one, sorry. Anyway, the areas of clinical expertise that can be found in NPR that you'll be able to update in a self-service portal, as we've mentioned, they did go through a clinical review over the last year, but it's always being updated and adjusted on an ongoing basis. So if you jump into NPR because you want to update an area of expertise that you're very proud of, or you want to acquire new patients for, and you're not seeing it at NPR, please reach out to us and let us know, and we will get that added and integrated into the site. We also use these to help set up the synonyms throughout the website. As we know, there are a lot of folks who have varying levels of health literacy. And so anytime we have the opportunity to add synonym terms throughout the website, it also helps within that match. And I think we got the next slide now, please. And now, as we've moved to online appointment scheduling, or expanding online appointment scheduling through the expansion of direct and open scheduling and then integrating it into the website, we heard absolutely loud and clear that this tool has to do a better job of improving the patient-provider match for new patients. So to meet that need, as we onboard each clinic, we meet with the clinicians, we meet with the staff, and we really whittle down to a very solid list of reasons for visit that are appropriate for patient self-scheduling. These can be modified for each provider in NPR. These are also self-service, so we'll have a more or less fixed list at any point in time, and then you can go in and just say, I want to treat this, I want to treat that, and you can continue to modify what's going to be available for patients to self-schedule. So we don't expect a large number of changes to what we've got on the list, but of course, if there is something that you do feel that we've overlooked through online scheduling, and we've been rolling that out very slowly throughout Department of Surgery, but we're on track to add quite a few more specialties this year. Please reach out and let us know how else we can adjust the areas of clinical expertise and the reasons for visit to better serve your needs as you present to the public. And that is a screen. If for those of you who've not seen online scheduling, there's a screen of the reasons for visit that patients can self-select from for online scheduling.
Thank you. Oh, you're gonna go through demo? Terrific.
Yep. Thanks, Kaylee and Dr. Snow. We'll do a quick demo here. We do have the screen grabs on the slide deck. If I can go ahead and share my screen, I can do a live demo, or we can go through the slides, whichever works.
Great. Elise, can you give her, Julianne, the ability to share a screen? Great.
Perfect. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
The homepage? Okay. All right. So to get to the portal itself, you'll want to come to the UCM homepage. You'll come down to the middle of the screen where it says clinical resources. And then under quick links, if you scroll down, you'll see the master provider repository hyperlink. Go ahead and click onto that. You log in using your single sign-on. Notice that there's both a UCM and Ingalls sign-on option. I think I'm already logged in this morning, so I don't have to do the duo. But once you log in, it'll look a little bit different for providers. I'm not a provider, but your profile should pull up once you do sign in. But for our purposes today, I'll look at Dr. Nunes' profile. And once this loads. All right, so here's Dr. Nunes' profile. You'll notice that there's demographics, academic information, contact, organizational and insurance information. I know it's very hard to see, but there is a slight color difference. There are dark gray boxes and these light gray boxes. These light gray boxes indicate the end user to be able to make changes directly in the portal itself. So for example, for a board certification, Dr. Nunes would be able to go in and change that versus an address change that needs to be made. That would require a ServiceNow ticket. So you'll just come to the left side over here, and when you double click into this hyperlink, it directs you to the ServiceNow portal. But the process here is to just ensure that your information is correct, and if it's not, that we update the information where it needs to be. As providers, you'll have a little icon at the bottom of your profile page that says verify record. Here we see that Dr. Nunes has already verified its record, so this profile is considered to be completed. A few things to note: the Master Provider Portal does not work on Internet Explorer, so we want to make sure that we're using like Microsoft Edge, Mozilla Firefox, etc. And we also need to be connected to the network, so whether that be Wi-Fi or VPN access, those are the two kind of items that we want to make sure that we have checked off while making our profile reviews. I know that was a super quick demo, but again, in the slide deck, we do have screen grabs of what we just went over as well.
Great, thanks, guys. I think there was a question from Vivek about the call center, and yes, our goal is to have the call center be able to use this as their main resource as to what specialties and what reasons for visits should drive appointments to a particular provider. Right now our call center is more paper-based than anything else in their ability to figure out which physician will accept which patient. This is really important right now. We all know that Dr. Matthews is an expert at Whipple, but not everyone in the institution knows that, and certainly not everyone outside the institution knows that. And so this is going to really help us to be able to drive accurately patients in to see Dr. Matthews, so that we don't have him wasting his clinical time on patients who he will not be able to ultimately care for, and being able to attract patients who he can care for. We are going on live with online scheduling with 3 or 4 surgical specialties in the next 3 months. And so time is of the essence. In order for us to have success in online scheduling, we really need for these reasons for visits to be accurate. So thank you in advance for all of your assistance in trying to get this as fine detailed as possible.
I think it's important that we get the link out for this, because I'm working on my laptop here and I can't find. I've been working for the last 5 minutes to try to find that link that you started from, and I have no idea how to find that homepage. All I get is the public site, or I get the UChicago site.
So you do need to be on, as it says at the top, do need to be connected to the network and not using Internet Explorer.
Yeah,
But
I'm connected to the network and not using Internet Explorer, but nobody can find the link.
So we'll give very
Just understand that we're all idiots here, and we don't know how to do this.
We can give very detailed instructions on how to find it.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, and we'll do that follow up, and maybe we'll add that into the slides as well. Super. Let's continue on. Can we keep advancing the slides? Great. Doug, we're gonna skip the finance update. Let's move directly to the quality update. We'll circulate this. There's some very obvious information, a couple of slides that folks will want to look through there. But Vivek, why don't you go ahead and quickly do your quality update? I know you have some important points that you want to make, and then I want to get to Grace.
Sure. Well, good morning, everyone. As you probably recall, about a month ago, there was email sent out with the leapfrog score. We got another A. I'd just like to update our slide to show how our peer academic institutions are doing as well. Next slide. And one of the questions that I oftentimes receive after these emails are sent out is, that's all well and good, but how come our U.S. News and World Report rankings have not improved commensurate with how well we've been doing with regards to safety? Well, I think that there's 2 pieces here. Number one, we are actually making significant improvements, and we're up to 32 from 51. And there's a lot of effort being put into figuring out the specifics around how we can improve this. One of these is obviously the whole networking and encouraging people to list U of C as a expert and having a reputation for expertise in the various areas. And especially over the next couple of months, you'll be receiving a lot of nudges to do that amongst your peers, amongst alumni from residency programs and so forth. Next slide. And in looking at the system, there's the specialties themselves, as well as a number of procedures and conditions that are used in the scoring process. Next slide. And in doing a deeper dive in looking at the actual scoring process, over on the right-hand side with the outcomes, when looking at a deeper dive of our own outcomes, where we have the greatest opportunity to improve for U.S. News outcome ranking is our 30-day mortality. Now, I think that the key take home here is not necessarily that our systems are awful, and that's why we have a 30-day mortality that's not proportionate to what where we want to be, although obviously there's always opportunities for improvement there. But instead, it's actually to make sure that when we are having mortalities, that the patients, the way that they're described in documentation actually reflects the complexity and the illness severity of the patients that we all know that we are taking care of. Next slide. And so that really boils down to improving clinical documentation to make sure that we have all the comorbidities and the complexity documented in a way that's, I think, commensurate with our day-to-day integration of that information into perioperative planning, and in a way that makes it less burdensome to do the documentation itself. Next slide. So by having these comorbidities documented, it allows for accurate clinical risk adjustment. As I alluded to, it affects U.S. News and World Report, but it actually affects us financially as well. There's a number of different formulas that are used that incorporate these comorbidities to create scoring systems like the risk adjustment, the RAF score for our Medicare Advantage and value-based contracts. And academic centers in general should have this score in the 1.5 to 2 range. And based on our documentation, we're only in the 1 to the 1.05 range. And so we know that we're taking care of patients as sick, if not sicker than other academic centers. And so it's just a matter of our documentation reflecting that. And that actually has a direct impact on the financials of the institution. I think that kind of having a review process to think about those comorbidities helps with perioperative planning and patient management, bed availabilities and so forth. And having that information facilitates handoffs and cross coverage. Having this data available in a reproducible way in a discrete format allows for clinical research to take place. And I think that it also helps our trainees to really get in the habit of synthesizing the clinical information regarding the patient's underlying risk to improve patient management and get that judgment piece as well. Next slide. And so a number of years ago, we had created this SMART form that's based on NSQIP preoperative risk factors that are used in the NSQIP risk calculator. But when we kind of took another look at this, and based on sort of the variables that are important for U.S. News and the other clinical risk adjustment, there's really quite good mapping of this form to the risk factors and comorbidities that are necessary, that a number of service lines are trying to integrate in a different way with dot phrases and so forth. But the strength of this is that the data is captured in a way that can be readily accessed, and a form like this can be filled out pretty quickly. And it looks like a lot of buttons, but I would argue that if you know the patient that is going to be having surgery, you could fill this out pretty quickly. And for our trainees or APPs that are seeing patients in the pre-op area and having had reviewed the cases, these questions are pretty straightforward to answer. Next slide. And so the idea it would be to integrate this in the interval H&P, which is the medical legal documentation that's required even for patients who have had a H&P within 30 days when they come to the OR. Initially, this is going to have to be added manually as this dot phrase, but we're working with Epic and IT to have this as a standard inclusion in the interval H&P template. And I introduced this first to the faculty to highlight why it is that we're doing this and the initial steps that are going to need to be taken. And for next steps, it's going to be a matter of meeting with the program directors and the APPs and the other quality representatives to make sure that this is integrated into our workflows. So I'll stop there and answer questions. Dr. Matthews, do you have any other comments?
No, I think I'm really excited about this. This really looks like a breakthrough for us. It's going to really help us with our documentation throughout. It's going to help us with many elements of what we want to do, whether it's risk assessment or enhanced documentation for the purposes of risk adjustment in the various ways that we're measured. I think it's really good. I want to thank you for your efforts on this, Vivek. So more to come on that. Thanks. Let's go on because the hour is late. We just have a couple of minutes left. Dr. Mack is going to update us on our faculty retreat plans, which look really exciting.
Good morning, everybody. I'll be brief. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me. We're really excited that we're going to have our first retreat since COVID. And so we're going to have it to be in person. Our theme is going to be re-emerging from the pandemic and building community. Our plan is early March. Right now, we're looking at March 2nd, March 2nd, a Thursday. And the plan will be that we'll have like cocktails and appetizers from 5 to 5:30. And then the session will go from about 5:30 to 8 or 8:30. Please look for more details to come in terms of calendar invites, etc. The venue will be on campus, but in order for us to have libations and food, it will not be able to be like in the CCD like what we've had in the past. And so it will still be on the Hyde Park campus, but we may have to walk just a little bit from like CCD and the operative areas. But full details to come, and we're really, really excited to really see everybody in person and to, you know, like we talked about, kind of rebuild our community and figure out how we want to go forward post-pandemic. Next slide, please. I also wanted to let everybody know that one of the things that we're working on moving forward is a professional development workshop. We've been working with Dr. Andrews, our the wellness person for UC, and our plan is to do it in late March, early April. And the first session that we're going to have is for our assistant professors. I'm really looking forward to this. I've seen Bree's professional development workshops, and they're really good. So I think that'll be great. And then moving on from here, we'll look at also developing workshops for associate professors, full professors, etc. Next slide, please. The last thing I want to talk about, I'm also really excited about, and that's looking at wellness and burnout. And I know that's something that's been a concern for a lot of us. And so, you know, sort of this part is like two-part that we're going to talk about. We're going to be sending out an email to everybody that includes a link to a baseline, sort of a wellness or burnout baseline survey on REDCap. It's a really cool survey. It's actually interactive, and it will kind of give you a percentage of your like risk for emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, work satisfaction, EMR or EHR stress, and work engagement. And as we all know, all these things can contribute to burnout. And so what I hope is that by taking this survey, people will sort of see if they are potentially at risk, but then also even more importantly, kind of get a baseline that we can look at to look at further and follow throughout time. But then also we have a really exciting wellness program. It's called an opt-in or opt-out wellness program. Is completely voluntary and confidential. And basically what it is an initial 30-minute virtual session with a prospective licensed mental health counselor. And then from there, they can help assess if there are any additional services needed. And then there's 10 free sessions after that. So all this is completely paid for from our wellness funds. And so it's a really exciting program. And I think that from a combination of just doing the virtual session, as well as maybe taking the survey, you know, it can help people, you know, with any wellness issues or potential risks for burnout. So I really encourage everyone to participate. Obviously, like I said, it's completely voluntary. Next slide, please. And our plan is going to be that we're going to continue to send those burnout surveys so that we can also follow it over time, and also see if you have participated in any of our wellness initiatives, if that made any difference with our wellness and burnout. And so more information will be coming in emails. And so please look at these and participate. Thank you so much. Any questions, please let me know.
Great. Seeing no hands up, I know that the hour is late. The departmental news, just want to click on there. Let's just go forward. I just want to make some quick introduction. So we've got we're not going to, the annual report, which is largely video based, is coming out soon. We're very excited about that. So stay tuned for that. I guess is it live now? It says it's now live. So I guess it is now live. We'll send that link around for everybody to see it. We'll start to get some publicity around that. Next slide, please. I'm not going to be able to have the time to go through all this. I just want to make sure that everybody recognizes the importance of completing their harassment prevention training. All faculty and staff have to complete these. I know that these are sometimes feel burdensome. I've done it. I've gone through it. It's fairly straightforward. There is a live Zoom event on Thursday, January 26th, that I know is not optimal from 11 to 2, which is probably not going to work for most surgeons, but maybe for many of our staff that will work. Currently, we've only had about half of our faculty and staff complete that. So really need to pay attention to that. It's relatively painless to go through the online course, and we'll be bugging you about that. I know these things feel very burdensome. Next slide, please. Just some news about some new appointments and some promotions. Advance, go ahead, Elise. From promotions, Dr. Umansky in colorectal surgery was promoted to professor of surgery. Congratulations to Constantine. He's been with us on faculty for 14 years now, going on 15 years, and that was effective on November 1st. Congratulations to Constantine. And next, Dr. Ben Shogan was promoted to associate professor, also in colorectal surgery. Congratulations. He is, is a highly accomplished surgeon scientist, has made some major contributions, federally funded lab, and making great progress. So congratulations, Dr. Shogan. Next. New faculty, I want to just introduce Dr. Phil Lasavio. I know when we do our faculty meetings in person, it's easy for somebody to stand up and wave and be acknowledged, but we can't do that, but we'll all give Phil a virtual wave. Phil has been recruited from Rush. He is an expert sleep surgeon who is runs a very large sleep program, will be as the surgical director of our sleep center here at UChicago now, and is going to play a role in surgical GME, which we are starting to establish. He came very highly experienced as a program director from Rush and as DIO at Rush as well. So we're really excited to welcome him both for the clinical program that he'll build, and his experience and expertise in GME is going to be exciting to leverage. So welcome, Phil. Next. Also, Dr. Felgenhauer in ARC has joined us, and we're thrilled that she is on board. Our veterinarians are so important to our research programs, not only in our department, but across the medical center. And so welcome to her. Next, I think we have then the accolades. We'll send these around for folks to be able to read through, and I think we're not going to be able to flip through these all now. There just simply isn't enough time, but I think everybody will enjoy reading them, as I always do. So we'll get that slide deck out to everybody later this morning. So that's we're at time. It's 8:15. Thanks everybody, and hope everybody has a good day. Welcome back. Happy New Year to everybody. Thank you.